Hello everyone and welcome to FiST Chat, the vodcast that features discussions on the topics of film, science and technology. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve?
I'm good, thanks, Ben. Hello, FiST Chat fans. We're back on to our favourite FiST Chat topic.
Absolutely.
Outer space.
Absolutely. We'll be zipping through the stars before you know it. But before we get into that, don't forget our usual housekeeping, our website, www.fistchat.com. You can get all our links there. Please subscribe to our audio. You can do that via iTunes, RSS and FeedBurner. It's a great way to get all of our episodes. And you can also do that via YouTube, Vimeo and Digicosm TV. Interact with us on Twitter, Google Plus and Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. Our ebook is now finally available. We mentioned that last week and it's all good to go. You can grab it on Amazon at the price tag of 99 cents. It's a great deal.
Unbelievable value. I mean, it's less than a cent per blog, Ben. That's fantastic.
Absolutely. So it's a great way to get all of our writing in one place from the first 2 years of FiST Chat and be helping us out with that too. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. And we've also got a new website for that, fistreport.com. So very easy to find. We've also got our supplementary content that will probably end up in a new book probably next year with the weekly blogs, and we've also got our photography on Instagram and Flickr. And don't forget to recommend us to anyone who may be interested, and we'd love to hear from them as well. Now, we're going to talk about how to become an astronaut. So do you really want to become an astronaut? That's the big question. We'll go to our poll that we ran on Friday. Would you like to travel in space? And this was interesting. It was a bit more polarized than I thought. 58% said yes, 42% said no. And it's quite interesting. To be honest, I know you're keen. I'm not sure I'm keen, but I'm kind of a bit edgy that way. You know, I'd want it to be like completely, trialed out and, fixed up to the nth degree before I tried it. But you'd be up there frontiering it, would you think?
Oh, of course. I think the days for me venturing out into deep space, I might not be so keen on that anymore as I once was, but definitely any chance to go into space, visit the moon, or even live on space station for a few weeks would be awesome.
Absolutely.
I mean, who wouldn't want to go into space is what I would ask.
Yeah, exactly. But do you think it would? We'll probably touch on this a bit later. But to get to the point where anyone could just buy a ticket and go to the moon, there'd have to be a lot of technological innovation and also a lot of streamlining of how the whole process would work, so that you wouldn't even think about it. It'd be like catching a flight. But there'd be a lot of work still involved with that.
Well, that's true, but I guess, you just look at what happened with air travel here on planet Earth. Once upon a time, it was only for very few people and mainly only aviators or pilots.
Yeah.
As the planes got bigger and they started to use them, obviously in terms of surveillance for warfare or for cargo or for just, moving quickly across great tracts of land. And I imagine that now we're moving from an era of exploration of space to the commercialisation of space, both in terms of tourism and the resources that are actually out there in space. So there'll be a whole range of industries or space industries, which means people have to live and work in space, which really will increase the number of opportunities of people to be maybe what we've traditionally called astronauts, but maybe they'll become something like space workers or something sexy like that.
Absolutely. So in preparing today's episode, we came across NASA's requirements for becoming an astronaut, which was quite an interesting read, and of course is still relevant for anyone who wants to go up there right now, of course. It was quite an interesting set of requirements. Of course, different roles have different requirements as well. Like for example, they've got to be an astronaut pilot. You need at least 1,000 hours piloting command time in jet aircraft, which makes a lot of sense. The ability to pass a NASA space physical, which apparently is similar to a military or civilian flight physical. And a bachelor's degree from an accredited institution in engineering, biological science, physical science, or mathematics, and an advanced degree is desirable. So there's a lot of qualifications you would need to bring to this sort of role if you really wanted to do it right now.
Oh, that's right. And there's also a lot of personal qualities you have to bring as well. I've been lucky enough to see Andy Thomas, Australia's astronaut, speak on a number of occasions. And one of the things he points out very interestingly is that a significant proportion of astronauts have actually been in the Scouts.
No, okay.
So, and he says that, it's that sort of training even at a young age to be prepared to cope with different situations that NASA are looking for. So even if you pass the NASA physical, and even if you have the degree and the basic qualifications, and then you pass the week-long personal tests that they give you or personal interviews they give you, you then go onto a roster. You become an astronaut candidate. But even then, there's no sort of guarantee. You've still got to do a lot of in-house training, and, that very often is another, anywhere between 3 to maybe 10 years before you might even be considered for the actual roster to go into space.
Yep.
So, you're not guaranteed at all. But, you get a great job at NASA, and who wouldn't want to be working in a program like NASA's space program?
Yeah. I'm just wondering, though, just returning to that, if we're looking forward again, that whole thing about reaching that point where anyone could travel in space. Although, there's an analogy there with, the first flights and what was required to make it comfortable and easy for everyone to do it. Maybe it is that just that bit more difficult, isn't it? Because of the fact that it's a different atmosphere, there's a different set of physical conditions that people will have to deal with.
It's not for everyone, obviously, and maybe that will be, just like air travel's not for everyone. Some people just won't fly. But, I mean, they've sent some quite elderly astronauts, nearly 70 years of age, I think, back into space, bearing in mind that they had been trained as astronauts and had been lifelong astronauts and had flown other missions into space. So it wasn't the first time they'd ever been exposed to that. But, I mean, I'd be very interested to know, and maybe we should check on this, for instance, Virgin Galactic. Can anyone just go on Richard Branson's 8 minutes to space, or do you have to, I know that you have to do training, and I know you do have to pass a basic medical, but I don't know how stringent it is. And I imagine that they're always going to have to do that. The body's put under a lot of stress going into space, so you would expect that unless they change the delivery mode, then probably some people physically just won't be able to get there.
Because you'd have to be in top physical condition in using current technology to go out into space, wouldn't you?
Well, you would, yeah, because you're strapped on top of a great big rocket and blasted into space. But there could well be the sort of Virgin Galactic style space experience where you're taken up in a normal jet plane up very high, and then the rocket launches from there to escape velocity, which is probably not as stressful as it is lifting off from a launch pad with needing to lift thousands of tons into the sky. So I think that but I don't think in another 20 or 30 years, the more people that live and work in space, the more people that be needed up there to serve them, and the more opportunities there will be for anyone to fly into space. It's going to be great.
And just finally, how far away are we from, seeing a very permanent presence of humanity up there?
Well, the ISS effectively is now, but if you're talking about that expanding and there to be a sizable community up there, China and India are very serious about their space programs. You've got the International Space Station, 20 to 30 years, about the same time we start going to Mars and back to the moon. That's when you're going to start to see the next big wave of space exploration.
Right. Well, we'll watch this space. It's very interesting. I mean, we're kind of in that middle period now where the old NASA program kind of is finished up, and of what the space shuttle program and all of that.
Yeah.
And we're sort of moving into a different phase now where there's kind of going to be a mix of different nations doing it and also private enterprise doing it. So it should be interesting to see how it all turns out in the next decade or two. All right, we'll move on to our news bites now, and film news bite is more sort of highlighting two films that I hadn't actually heard of before that sort of fit in with what we're talking about here. Gravity, which is coming out later in the year, stars Sandra Bullock and George Clooney. They're on on their first shuttle mission on a seemingly routine spacewalk. Disaster strikes, of course. The shuttle's destroyed, leaving both of them completely alone, tethered to nothing but each other and spiraling out into the blackness. So it'd be like Apollo 13 maybe, or something like that.
This is weird. I mean, considering the shuttle's been retired, I'm surprised they're making a film about it now.
But it was just a very odd concept. I guess we'd have to look at it to see how it turns out, but might be worth checking out. Then there was
still one location, Ben. Always makes for a good film.
It makes that easy to produce, as we know. Then there's this other film, Upside Down, and to me this sounded like they've done the romantic film to the nth degree, and now they've got to throw in a sci-fi twist. A pair separated, not starring Jim Sturgis and Kirsten Dunst. The pair are separated not just by social class and a political system bent on keeping them apart, but also by a freak planetary condition. They live on twinned worlds with gravities that pull in opposite directions. He's on the poverty-stricken planet below, she on the wealthy, exploitative world above.
Gravity pulling in opposite directions.
It's
not sounding good already, Ben.
That's what I was saying. Is this like a Hollywood pitch gone wrong somewhere?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we've only read the synopsis, but could be a good film for Hollywood, bad film for science. Let's leave it at that.
Absolutely. All right, we'll move on to our science news bite, and this is from the ABC. Saturn's birthplace discovered, which turns out to have been pretty much exactly where it is now. Quite interesting. According to a study of chemical composition of its biggest moon, Titan. And apparently this will affect theories about the extent of planetary migration during the early evolution of the solar system.
Yeah, I guess we just kind of think that the world's always been like this and all the planets have always just been there and, nothing ever changes, but it does. I mean, there's good evidence that there was maybe a protoplanet about the same size as Mars that hit Earth, and that's where the moon comes from, and maybe... it's amazing that Saturn hasn't moved.
I think planetary formation, that's something we can talk about in another episode, but that's been quite fascinating to me that it sort of came out of, gas, dust and cloud kind of thing, and it's sort of solidified into what we know, and it's the events that would be required and the elements required to make that happen. Apart from the fact that it took so long to do as well, is quite an interesting topic all on its own.
Oh, it's unbelievable. It's a bit like, even just the evolution of Earth. Earth wasn't always the way it looks today. Once upon a time it would have been a toxic place for humans and all life. So, things really change. So, I guess it's amazing to think that Saturn's really pretty much always been there and not changed much at all.
All right, and finally, our tech news bite, also from the ABC, and this kind of brings it full circle with what we were talking about before. Multi-millionaire planning mission to Mars. A non-profit foundation wants to recruit a man and a woman for a 501-day journey to Mars and back that would start in less than 5 years.
I'm signing up.
Absolutely. Mission expected to cost upwards of $973 million, would be privately financed by donations and sponsorships.
That's cheap.
Yeah, is that the private enterprise way of doing things? Project founder Dennis Tito, a multi-millionaire who in 2001 paid $19.4 million for a trip to the International Space Station, says he will pay startup costs for 2 years to begin development of life support systems and other critical technologies. So is this the beginning of what we were talking about before?
This is the beginning of what we're talking about because... if a privateer gets to Mars first, I don't actually know what that means in terms of international space law, Ben. Better call the experts. Better call in Star Trek. But that is huge, and that is the start.
Yeah.
If anyone can get into space, and the technology now is available for anyone with the money to get into space, then that opens up a whole new world of human exploration of the final frontier.
Absolutely. All right, Steve, we're out of time, so thanks again for the chat.
No problems. See you later, FiST Chat fans. See you on the way up. I don't know if we're coming back down.
Hopefully they'll invent the technology for that too. Alrighty, so that's it for this week's episode, so we'll catch you next week.